just when we thought we finally defeated the Illuminate threat once and for all, and on the heels of a very lit party at Widow's Peak, the squids unexpectedly returned. Using the Meridia wormhole, they executed their sneak attack and brought with them new foes for us Helldivers to face. And they are honing their sights on Super Earth itself. And with this new and returning threat, it all begs the question, which of these Illuminate are the best and which are the worst to deal with out on the battlefield? Dr. Pooplove here, and that's what I hope to find out. In this video, I will be ranking each of the squid enemies on a tier list, with S being the best or easiest to deal with, and Poop Hater being the absolute worst. Starting with the Voteless. Now technically, these guys aren't even Illuminate. They are citizens of Super Earth that have been abducted by the squids who have carried out some crazy experiments on them, such that they have now become these zombie-like creatures. And worst of all, they can no longer vote. Now fighting these guys is not super hard, even with some having more health than others. They are very weak to headshots as well as leg shots, which will leave them crawling towards you. And they only have light armor, so everything works on them. They are also fairly easy to avoid and dodge around. The real threat of this enemy comes in the fact that they travel in numbers, and those numbers will multiply as they spawn from both spaceships and warp ships. And so you must not let the horde overwhelm you. That's why crowd control items like explosives, gas, and flames will handle these guys quite nicely. The Voteless are fairly easy to face and actually quite fun, as you can rack up a pretty huge kill count with these guys. And so they get an S tier as an enemy. They are the best to deal with. Now, before going to the next one on this list, let me just explain a little bit about this tier list. Just because I've determined the Voteless to be the best to deal with, and just because others may be worse, doesn't mean I actually wish those enemies weren't in the game. Rather, this game would get pretty old pretty quickly if the Voteless was all we faced off against. And so even the hardest enemies that we end up facing against keep the game interesting and balanced in a way that really keeps you interested and keeps you playing. But let's move on to the next enemy we have, and that is the Fleshmob. This is a failed Illuminate experiment, a Frankenstein monster cobbled together from voteless parts. Kind of reminds me of the Rat King from The Last of Us. And this big boy is no joke. He is a tank that can charge at you, kind of like a charger, faltering a bit if you avoid him. And if you don't avoid him, he will absolutely tear you apart. Now, this guy is pretty hard to take down. He will completely tank anti-tank shots, and even an FRV can't run him down. And these guys will wreck your vehicle if they get their hands on you. Despite that, he only does have light armor, so really anything can hurt him, but rather he just has a lot of health. And he's also immune to a good number of things. Stagger and stun rounds do not stop this guy, despite doing damage. I sort of take that back. The halt stun rounds do seem to work, but it's not always consistent. I think it has to do with getting headshots. What seems to be one of the quickest ways to kill this guy is with the Wasp burst fire shots, taking about 4, or trying to take out his multiple heads. And that's something where explosive type weaponry might help out a lot. The Scorcher and the Purifier can make that job quite a bit easier for these guys. Flames also seem to be a decent option, although it still will take a while, and gas is nice to keep them off your back. Now, despite being quite stubborn to put this guy down, as a singular enemy, he's not too hard to deal with and mostly just becomes a threat when in concert with the other enemies. So for that, I will give him a B. Now, next up, we have the Watcher. This is a small, light armor floating Illuminate drone that scans the surface of the planets for Helldivers. It has a light armor attack that it will deploy, which can hurt a little bit, but it also does miss a lot. He also will explode once taken down, so you do need to watch out for that. Now, while this guy is not a huge threat in that regard, the real challenge is when it spots you, because what it will do is it will deploy blue flares into the sky, which will call in a warp ship that will spawn in tons of other Illuminate threats. As such, when you see these guys, it's best to avoid them or take them out very quickly. And at least since they are fairly weak to most things and pretty easy to take out, they're not that hard to deal with. So for that, I'll give the Watcher an A. But next, we're going to go to the Illuminate Overseers, and we actually have 3 different types. Starting with the basic Ground Overseer. These guys are Illuminate that patrol the ground carrying both a staff and a shield. They are pretty tanky, although not as tanky as the Fleshmob. They have light body armor and a medium armor helmet. Now, these guys wield a staff, which they will swing wildly at you for tons of damage, but they will also shoot projectiles at you if you're more at range. Now, you can take these guys out with most things to the body, although they will deploy a shield at times, and this will either need to be cracked, or you can aim for its legs, or just wait for them to put it away. Headshots with medium armor weapons are the quickest way to kill these guys with high damaging weapons like the Senator or the Deadeye, being able to kill them from the head in one shot. They're tough, but they're not that hard. These guys will get a B. Now, the next type of Overseer is the Elevated Overseer, which is a variant of the Overseer, but it has a lift pack, a gun, and a throwable bomb. Now, despite sharing the same health stats as the normal Overseer, these guys I find much harder to deal with. Their gunfire is pretty frequent, so you do need to watch out for that, and they will throw bombs at you, although they're not that hard, you can toss them away. The hardest part for me is largely because they are flying overhead, and they often kind of strafe away and change positions a lot, making it a little bit difficult to target. And also, these guys will distract you, allowing basically everyone else to get the jump on you. Now, one quick way to deal with them is targeting their jump pack, which if successful will explode and take them out pretty quickly, and that is nice. Otherwise, utilizing the same weapons that you used versus the Ground Overseers will work. I will say these guys are pretty responsible for a lot of the difficulty and deaths that I have on this front, even if indirectly, and so I will give them a C. Now, the third variant of the Overseer is the new Crescent Overseer, which equips some sort of plasma punisher type weapon that either will lob these at you from far away or shoot them directly in your face. And despite having a pretty strong weapon here, I find these to be the easiest version of the Overseers to face. Of course, having the same health pool, but only having one weapon that you need to counter. Some stagger shots can be great to stop them or just hit them with some heavy damage, or both. Unfortunately, I wish you could, but you can't pick up their plasma weapons, which would be cool for a few quick lobs back at the enemies. Overall, I think these guys are not too hard to face. I'll give them an A for difficulty. Now, moving on, we have the Harvester, a crazy towering tripod Illuminate that has a shield around it and 2 main attacks, a strong lightning arc when in close range, and a crazy ray of death for when you're farther away. And that ray of death will sweep around and try to wreck you, and it often will. What makes this guy even harder are the levels of defense that it has. It has a shield that you need to burst before dishing out any damage to it, and that shield will recharge unless you take out either its top or bottom shield generators near its eye. And while you might expect the eye to be its weak spot, that will take a ton of damage and it won't be that efficient. This thing is covered in mostly heavy armor, but it does have medium armor weak spots by its leg joints as well as on the lower legs themselves, although the lower legs are much harder to hit, so generally I go for the joints as a more reliable method. So in order to take this guy down, it takes a good deal of coordination, and often you have to utilize different weapons at the same time that you have to make sure you avoid its highly lethal attacks. And so this puts this bad boy as a poop hater, and a democracy hater at that. But the next one we have is not much better, and that is the Stingray, which you may see killing you as the name the Interloper. And this is basically a spacecraft that flies at ultrasonic speeds and essentially tracks Helldivers and deploys a plasma strafing run over them. Your last memory may be seeing the blue light on the ground beneath you, which is a sign of where they will be swooping in. Now, these projectiles do look a little bit like arc, but I regret to inform you that the electrical conduit armor is not really going to save you here, and I don't think it's arc. It does seem more like plasma type explosions, and so the explosive resistant armor on the fortified armor set can protect you a little bit, at least enough to survive the blast. Your best bet though is just getting the fuck out of the way, and this actually makes the jump pack a good friend for you there. Now, these guys are pretty difficult, mostly because of how lethal they are, but also because of how short of a window you actually have in order to kill it. Most of the time it circles the air and it's moving too fast and is too far for you to get it with anything. Now you can see its trail and try to track it, but eventually it will slow down to swoop in, and that is when you have a chance to nail this thing with something strong. Now, this is medium armor penetrating, so a good lot of things can take it down, but it will take a while for a lot. So your best bet is to have some sort of anti-tank option, and you have to be quick. The spear can work, although you do have to lock in and shoot it pretty quickly. And even the quasar cannon can be good for it, but it does struggle a little bit as you have to wind up your shot. So you got to make sure you time it right so that you get him before he's out of there. The other difficult thing to mention is how, just like the elevated overseers, this thing can just greatly distract you, as you may be tempted to try to track its location, looking up to the skies, leaving you completely open to the rest of the horde. This one is tough, and so yeah, we're gonna have to add another poop hater into the mix. And so here we have our list. This is how the Illuminate rank when looking at the best to deal with and scaling all the way down to the worst. But what do you think? In what ways are you best surviving these blue menaces? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to let me know. And check out my other Helldivers tier lists in this playlist. Thank you to my YouTube members for joining the Bowel Movement, but otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.